So for my project, I did mine on Marie Antoinette. Here we go. So she was originally born with the name Maria Antonia. She was born on the 2nd of November in 1755 at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria, which was then the Holy Roman Empire. She was actually born on All Souls Day, which is a day of mourning. So then her birthday was then celebrated the day before on All Saints Day, typically. She was born, her mother was Maria Theresa, and her father, Francis I. So she was in the Habsburg family, and she was born as an Archduchess of Austria. So a little about her early life. She wasn't particularly smart. She actually, by the age of 10, she could not write in German, which was her native language, nor could she write in French or Italian, which were other common languages used back then. Louis XV actually sent a tutor for her. His name was Matteo Jacques de Vermont, and he was quoted as characterizing her as she is rather lazy and extremely frivolous, as well as she is hard to teach. One thing that she did excel at was music. She was a talented musician. She played the harp, the harpsichord, the flute, and she also excelled at singing. And she often performed in the Hofburg Palace at many family events. So, about her marriage. After the 7 Years' War and the Diplomatic Revolution, Maria Theresa, her mother, wanted to settle things with Louis XV. And one way of doing that back then was through marriage, to join families. So she was married to Louis XV's heir, Louis Auguste, on April 19th, 1770. And she actually, on April 19th, 1770, she was married by proxy to her brother, Archduke Ferdinand, who was standing in for Louis, until her and Louis finally met on the 14th of May. There was some trouble consummating the marriage on both sides, which lasted for about 7 years. This was, nobody really knows why, but there are some suspicions that Louis Auguste suffered from a disorder where sex caused pain, but it's not really known. She changed her name as she entered France. She changed her name to Marie Antoinette just to go with the French way. And there was some conflict with Louis XV's mistress. So there was some conflict between her. Her name was Madame du Barry and Marie Antoinette. But after Louis XV dies, Marie Antoinette acknowledged Madame du Barry on New Year's Day, and this kind of settled the conflict. And after Louis XV died, Louis Auguste became Louis XVI, and Marie Antoinette then became queen. Just a little on her personality, which is what she is known for. She had a lot of trouble relating to the poor, and she was a very frivolous spender, especially when France was facing crisis. She spent a lot of money. She spent enormous sums of money on fashion, luxuries, and gambling. And, I mean, one thing that kind of personifies this was she is often attributed with the quote, "Qu'ils mangent de la brioche," which, when translated, means "let them eat brioche," or some people say "let them eat cake." And this had to do with, around the time this was said, was around the time of the Flour War in 1775, which is a series of riots which were due to the high price of flour and bread. Because of many bad harvests, this meant that most bread that the poor ate had to be cut with sawdust, and it was very poor. And with her saying this, she really, her reputation was very damaged among the general public. She received much, also because of this, she received much blame for France's financial crisis, as well as just other assets of her, or other parts of her frivolous spending. And even her mother, Maria Theresa, admonished her for leading this frivolous life, and was quoted in saying in a letter to Marie Antoinette that, "You lead a dissipated life. I hope I shall not live to see the disaster that is likely to ensue." So with the French Revolution, being part of the monarchy, they were a big target. In October of 1789, a few months after the revolution is basically started, 10,000 French commoners gathered outside the Versailles Palace, demanding the king and queen be taken to Paris. Because they were trapped, because they were in the Versailles Palace. Once the commoners gathered outside, they were trapped in the palace. They did attempt to escape at one point, but this was put to a stop because the commoners destroyed the carriages that were meant for the escape, and eventually they were captured and taken to Paris. So for the last escape that ended up almost happening, started with Marie Antoinette and her secret lover, Axel von Fersen. They planned to escape to Montmedy with the rest of the royal family, which was a place near the German border. Ultimately, her desire for luxury proved to be pretty detrimental. She demanded large carriages as opposed to the small ones that Fersen suggested, and she wanted these large carriages so that they could outfit a luxurious escape full with dining sets and whatnot. Also, Fersen was supposed to accompany them the whole way, but Louis insisted that they part ways. And almost immediately after this, Louis was recognized by a peasant, and they were captured and then returned to Paris. They were held captive in Paris, but Louis was still allowed to remain king, even though he had very little power. Marie Antoinette despised the French Assembly as well as the new Constitution. She is quoted as calling the French Assembly a heap of blackguards, madmen, and beasts. In letters that she wrote to royal officials to help aid the resurrection of the monarchy. And eventually they were forced into Square du Temple, which was a prison a prison. So as for their trial and execution, the royal family was still pursuing the idea of bringing power back to the monarchy all the way up to their execution. They were sending letters to and from foreign powers, but eventually these were discovered and seized, and this resulted in Louis's execution. Marie Antoinette was moved to a different prison, and there a military officer attempted to help her escape, but this was eventually uncovered, and she was put to death by guillotine pretty much right away. She was ultimately tried with treason as well as theft, and her last words were, Pardonnez-moi, monsieur, je ne l'ai pas fait exprès, which, when translated, means, pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose, and this is in response to after she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. There is my bibliography, and thank you.